What was the worst job interview you've had? The interviewer insisted on knowing why I'd left graduate school. Now, I had left graduate school because my advisor died in a car accident and the whole small department was thrown for a loop and no one seemed to know or care what was going to happen to me or my just started research project. The asshole interviewer wouldn't even accept my advisor died suddenly and dug into the gory details until I was almost in tears, even intimating that I must have had feelings for my advisor. I couldn't wait to get out of there, and in my haste to leave I knocked some solutions off a cart, which had no business being in his office BTW, on my way out. I'd never been so humiliated in my life. After that, I was sure I'd never get a job in science. At an interview for a tech startup, they asked me, if you could be any animal, what would you be? I answered otter because fun, active, work well with their hands and cute as fuck. They really debated whether or not to hire me because of that answer because, and I quote, we only hire predators, never prey. And they weren't sure how to quantify an otter because none of them had ever paid the least bit of attention to any sort of animal documentary or read biology or visited a zoo recently. God, that job sucked hard. I drove 2 hours for the interview. Got there and the interviewer was off sick and hadn't told anyone about me coming in. Got back in my car and drove the 2 hours home. Withdrew my name from consideration. Was invited for an IT helper position when I was 17. Would help fix computers for people at a shoddy PC fix shop. They asked me what's the first thing you check if a customer calls and says their screen doesn't turn on. I said, well, you gotta check if they have it plugged into a socket. They laughed and said thank you, that will be it. Then led me to the door and gently pushed me out. This was quite a while ago, maybe about 2010, and the recession was still hitting the job market pretty badly. Here I am, graduated from college a few years before, and looking for anything. I interviewed for a job calling people trying to recruit them for 2-year college. I think it was National American University. I had experience with customer service and some phone work doing tech support at my college, and this would be within my abilities. About halfway through the interview, I could tell it was going poorly. The guy interviewing me was asking me to give a sales pitch on recruiting, and I was failing. We got to the end, and he was upfront about saying I wouldn't be a good fit for what they needed. However, he did give me a bunch of great advice on how to properly interview and to be able to sell myself to a prospective employer. He even did a little coaching session with me. I knew he could see I was desperate, and I was unemployed, and he took time to help me out for my future attempts. I did take his advice, and was able to get a decent job eventually. I have always used the tips he gave me, and they have helped me greatly. So to that guy, thanks. 2. 1. The recruiter started to fold my CV into a paper plane during the interview. Didn't get the job. 2. Was pawned off unsuspectingly to the CFO of a company 5 minimums into my interview with the CEO. The CFO had no idea what to ask, so he went the tell me your biggest flaw way. I was so dejected that I said you'll have to hire me to find auto. Interview ended 5 minimums later. I spent 30 minutes crying at my hubris and stupidity in the parking lot. Got the job. I drove an hour to be interviewed for a computer repair tech job at a rental company, and 3/4 of the way through the interview they told me I was perfect for the position. However, they recently removed the position altogether. They then asked if I'd be willing to repair furniture instead until the position opened again. I walked in at 2:45 for a 3 o'clock interview. At 4 o'clock I asked reception for the last time if I was going to be interviewed. Finally they showed up 5 minutes later. There were 2 people doing the interview. They were hostile, rapid fire questions, half of which had nothing to do with my experience. One kept asking me where I worked during such and such a time, despite the other one looking at my application with all that info. Then they told me that if they hired me it'd be for a position below what I applied for, much lower pay, and I couldn't take time off. Finally they basically told me they'd be watching me like a hawk, and if I did drugs I'd be fired and arrested. I have never even smoked pot. I stood up and told them this wasn't for me and walked out. It was bizarre. I felt like I was being interrogated for a murder investigation as the prime suspect. In a group interview, the interviewer crossed a line through my name on the list he had after I told him what I graduated in. This was within the first 5 minutes of a 40-minute meeting. In the middle of my interview, the manager asked me if my current workplace that I was trying to leave was hiring. When I said I didn't know, he asked if I'd be willing to drop off a resume for him anyway. My first interview ever was at DQ, and I accidentally knocked a 90-year-old woman over. Job was for a vibration analysis engineer. I knew how to do the job well. I knew the pay should be around 95k, and they stated 55k in the interview. When I tried to discuss my point, they said, "Don't worry, there's plenty of overtime." They also mentioned, since they weren't involved with many balancings at the moment, I would assist the cleaning crew with a lot of the cleanings. I've never been so uninterested in a job in my life. 5 interview rounds, with the last interview round being with the CEO, all for an entry-level customer service job. During the last interview, the CEO said you were not allowed to get sick, and you were not allowed to leave at the end of the day until all of the work had been done. So even though the job was 8 to 4, the CEO said customer service reps often stayed until 6 PM or later. She also asked if I would be comfortable secretly reporting to her about what the customer service team is up to. I declined the job offer, and the company harassed me with emails asking why and what they did wrong. Really glad I did not take the job. My first interview in my life was for a fast food place, and I was way too honest. Why do you want to work here? Mostly for the money. I like the food here too. What do you do on your free time? Video games. Did not get a call back. Not that bad, but I remember Taco Bell asked me what type animal I would be if I could be anything. Like, WTF do you want me to say? I would be a fire ant, so I could work efficiently with my closest friends. A 16-year-old me said an eagle, because they are strong, and they can fly. Man. An agency sent me for an interview, and said our starting salary is £33,000. The interview went fairly well until the interviewer said, "So what sort of salary are you looking for?" So using the info I had from the agency, I said, "Rule, I think £33,000 is a fair starting point." The interviewer practically threw me out. He started to shout about wasting his time because I expected to be paid a huge salary, and who did I think I was? He was paying £20,000, Yeah, I have one that sticks out. I applied to a government branch as a network admin. The newspaper ad asked for a bachelor's degree. They called me into the interview. When I got there, the first thing the interviewer said was, "We wanted someone with a master's degree. Why did you apply?" Now, I wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they had other interviews that day and got them mixed up. Shit happens. I just informed the interviewer that the ad I applied for requested a bachelor's degree and confirmed the position I was interviewing for. No, we definitely wanted someone with a master's degree. So, again, why did you apply? If you wanted someone with a master's degree, why did you bother calling me in for an interview? You're very rude and unprofessional. Yeah, you fucked up at every junction thus far, but I'm the one who's rude and unprofessional. When he said, "I'll give you extra hours if you bring me smokes every day," then put his hand on my leg and said his wife gives him passes to have fun. I also got a speeding ticket on the way to the interview. Was not my month. I interviewed for a project management position. The interviewer describes the job. Basically it was pure research and data entry of potential clients, then cold calling them and documenting the results. The job ad mentioned exactly none of this, but was an average project management job ad, else I wouldn't have applied in the first place. I asked what exactly was the project management part and got told that could, not would, be down the road, maybe 2 to 5 years in, but really only maybe. I thanked them for the interview opportunity, we wrapped things up, and I politely left. I didn't conduct interviews, but I was the front desk person who handled scheduling the interviews and made small talk with them for a few minutes while they waited for the manager to get ready for them. Most people were polite and nervous, and I enjoyed sort of putting them at ease. But there was one guy, maybe 18, who had obviously been forced into it by his parents. He showed up dressed nicely, but his attitude was horrendous. While waiting, instead of polite small talk, he insulted the company, the position he was applying for, and me. I was shocked and just stopped trying to talk to him. We sat in silence for a few minutes until the manager came out and greeted him. He must have been similarly rude to her, because after he left the interview she came out shaking her head and said he wasn't getting the job. 2 days later his dad shows up in my office asking why he didn't get hired. That was awkward. In hindsight I think it was actually the father who called to schedule the interview, not the son, because the guy on the phone had been perfectly nice. An interviewer told me that he worried I would be sexually harassed if I joined his team. Red flag.